Hello, team players, and welcome back to a brand new NFL season. This is going to be the breakdown of all of our preseason bets. And when you go around the internet, you're going to see a lot of different people doing what we call strategic betting, meaning that they know what they're talking about and they invite you to come see, just as a mutual fund manager is the one who can pick the best stocks and win. Well, Bob and I believe in the old saying that says the market is always right. And that is what we bring to the table, actual market analysis with the market telling us what the answer will be. Now, you're going to get from each of us our individual takes where the market might be a little skewed here and there. But in general, the market tends to be right. In this episode, we are going to give you 7 virtually guaranteed over-unders, our predictions for how the divisions are going to shake out, as well as the 4 best bets for upcoming in week 1. And Bob, let's just jump right into it with the 7th best over-under, which is the Kansas City Chiefs line is at 11.5, and we are projecting them to smash that. So any takes on your original thought here of the over-under on the Chiefs and them not getting to the 11.5?
Right. So one of the biggest sticking points is what just happened this past week. So
sure.
Travis Kelce going down with a hyperextended knee. They say there's no damage to the ACL. They say that, they're going to go and take another look. He's not going to be ready for the Lions. And so the betting on the Lions game has really been a back and forth battle between the money line versus the point spread for both the Lions and the Chiefs. A lot of people are still on the Chiefs with the points and the money line on the Lions, which is unique. But there is a lot of good things to say about the Chiefs, right? They still have Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're struggling to get their defensive player back with a good contract, but they still have Andy Reid. They're still in a division that, despite having Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, they smashed the division.
Yes, they do.
So they're also playing the AFC East, and so that's another division that has a lot of big boppers that people think are going to go far. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that the Chiefs can run the table as they often do. And 11.5 out of all the games the Chiefs play this year, Patrick Mahomes, the way he plays, seems to be worth, we always talk about player worth versus wins here. I mean, his player value is so astronomically high that he could hit this over, it seems like, with any group of players.
And to that point, Bob, when Kelce was designated as out for this upcoming game against Detroit tomorrow, the spread only dropped a half a point, which from where it was at equated to about a 4% difference in outcome. So when we look at this and saying, oh, they lost Kelce, all that's true. The big dog is still there. As long as Mahomes is still in the office, I don't see a way where this over does not happen. We are projecting the Kansas City Chiefs to gain between 13 and 14 wins, and that is where they are coming in here. But always starting with the defending champions here, I want to go to something that I know you asked about here. One of the favorite bets in the NFL, who's going to have the least amount of wins? And not super surprising here, but the marketplace says it's going to come out to the Arizona Cardinals with between 2 and 3 wins. And I am personally loving the bet of, do the Cardinals win a game? No. Being a very fortunate one on a lot of sports books that are giving a lot of edge, because there's not a single game that the Cardinals are going to walk into and be the favorite. Now, granted, there's some weak matchups they play. Obviously, they play the Rams twice, but there is a large possibility that this team phones it in aggressively. The coaching staff is trying to lose to get the first pick, and that makes it a very volatile situation where you can lose a locker room and end up never getting anything positive.
Well, Joe, here's the thing. The coach doesn't even have the locker room. So he doesn't even have a locker room to lose. When you look at when he came in to the locker room, he starts to put a speech on about like breakfast in the morning and all this nonsense. And the players, it's basically like being in front of a bunch of teenagers, and they don't care what you have to say because you have not proven anything to us. You have not done anything for us. And it's going to be a tough sled for the Arizona Cardinals. They could easily phone it in for Caleb Williams if they think that Caleb Williams is the answer. I mean, they've got picks for the upcoming year, right? So if they do phone it in, the only way they lose if it's somebody actively phones it in against them to prevent them from getting the pick and prevent them from bringing Caleb Williams to the division, like the Rams. I mean, the Rams are such a big enigma to me, but out of the worst teams in the league, the Arizona Cardinals, I would be shocked if they win 4 games.
Oh, yeah.
I would be put in the grave if they win 5 games. But to be honest, there's a really good this is a really good bet because the under on their season, I mean, the other thing about the Cardinals is that they have some talent at some positions, but it's talent that has broken before, that will probably break again, and the backups are just not it. They are not going to be fielding a competitive team against Seattle. They're not going to be fielding a competitive team against San Francisco. So this line of the under on the Cardinals is great. But I don't think they'll be the last winless team, though, because there is a couple of bets like that on FanDuel's who's going to be the last winless team. I don't think they're going to be the last winless team, though.
That's a fair possibility. And in terms of the bet of least wins, which is the separate bet, the only game that I think that really could get these guys in trouble is if they beat Tampa Bay. Because we have Tampa Bay projected as only being 1 game better than the Arizona Cardinals, and they do play each other. So whenever you get a matchup like that, it does be a possibility. But while we're on the Cardinals, why don't we dive into the entire NFC West and the direction in which we're thinking there as we dive into some of the more locks on the over-unders as the show goes on. Let's face it, the NFC West isn't exactly breaking news here as far as how it's going to end, but we want to definitely give the love to it because we do have the recommendation here that Seattle is going to end up being the second wild card in the NFC, possibly the third, depending upon how things shake out, but certainly one of the safe wild cards in the NFC being the Seattle Seahawks.
So I fought you tooth and nail on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big Seahawks believer, and I have been for quite some time now in terms of NFC West. And I think that the product that the Seattle Seahawks is putting out on the field, both offensively and defensively, to me, projects to have a little bit more balance within their games. And I think that they're going to be not at. So here's the thing about the Niners, right? Their defense is good. But we talked also last year a lot about, is it a mirage of a defense? Is it just putting up big numbers because they're playing bad teams?
Mm-hmm.
And so right now, the 49ers, they're going to have to go out and prove themselves against a bunch of really good teams because they got the top seed in the division last year. So they're placing all the number ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're placing, it's going to be tougher for the Niners than it is going to be for the Seahawks, I think. And Seahawks have more depth and balance, both offensively, and they're getting a little bit better defensively. I'm not going to say they're like going to blow anybody out of the water, right? But the Niners defense is still strong, but we need to see what a full Brock Purdy season looks like. We need to see what a healthy Deebo Samuel looks like. And I think this is going to be tighter at the top than most people are going to want to think if you're a Niners fan. And if you are a Seahawks fan, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. And the Rams and the Cardinals, I think, are going to be, unless Stafford comes back healthy, this order seems fairly accurate, but I personally would flip the Seahawks and the Niners.
Well, that's one of the things that are there. The marketplace as is right now has a pretty demonstrably gap between the two of them. Because when you look at the Niners, aside from Philly, there's no one in the NFC that's even in their league. And they don't play the Cowboys. So with that being said, they have the cakewalk by default because the NFC is so bad. I mean, the difference here is they get Minnesota and Seattle gets Detroit. I think you'd rather have the Detroit than Minnesota, and the Niners win that benefit playing the first place schedule. And who cares about the South? Basically, because the Niners get Tampa because they won the South last year, which again is another kind of bank error in your favor for the Niners when you look at their schedule and how it actually breaks down.
But they also get the Steelers.
They get the Steelers, while the Hawks end up getting Baltimore. So it's not like it's that much different. The AFC North, when we get to that division, is very stacked. But let's get to the sixth best value for over-unders here, Bob. And that is going to be the Washington Commanders. Right now, their line is 6.5. We have them projected to win 4 games, which gives you just a massive edge over and over-under. The fear with this is 6 isn't a very big number. But the Washington Commanders are not a very good team. And that's the fundamental answer there.
They're one of those teams to me that when we've talked about the NFC East for a while now, they're one of those teams that is far behind their compatriots in the division. And it's one of those teams that every now and then can put out a show of some sort, a game that you don't expect. It's going to be interesting to see about the development of Sam Howell, to see if he is that guy for them. And the running game has two running backs, 3 with Rodriguez. They can all pretty much do something for that team to move the ball down the field. They have 2 pretty good wide receivers. So I'm not so concerned about the skill position players. But when it comes down to what the Commanders need to worry about is that offensive line, and the production of the defensive line. Chase Young is a beast, right? We know this, but the Commanders' defense, with once lofty expectations, has really not put up the best of the best seasons as we thought they might over the past couple of seasons. So when you look at this line of the Commanders, the games against the division rivals are going to be tough. And
maybe they get one of them.
The NFC East, they draw. Who do they draw? They draw also the AFC East, I believe.
And the AFC West.
And the AFC West. So these
they will get the Rams. They will get the Cardinals.
These games are going to be tough for them. And if they're drawing the AFC West too, you get some cakewalks. You get NFC West. You get some cakewalks too. So
they get the AFC East,
right?
Which so is probably going over.
This is going to be rough, and so the under seems reasonable at 6.5. It seems reasonable that they can get to 6 wins, but pushing 7, 8,
not a chance.
Doesn't seem likely to happen.
Not at all. While we're here, why don't we continue to dive into that division we just hit upon here? Again, the thing that I think is surprising here is that of the first and second place gap, the gap between the Eagles and Cowboys is closer than the Niners and Seattle. And I just find that interesting because the Cowboys we have as the fifth team, so they're going to be the first wild card. Everyone's in love with the boys, and we barely have them as an over 500 team at 10 wins.
So I'm one of those people that's in love with the boys.
I
fought you again on this one. But realistically, I like the Cowboys' expectations this year. I think that they're going to do better than a lot of people say. But Philadelphia is just such a strong team. They are filled with depth that unless something happens to Jalen Hurts, unless something happens catastrophically in the middle of the season somehow, it's the Eagles' division to lose. And by default, the Cowboys and Giants division to come in second place in. And so the Cowboys and the Giants are a lot closer, I think, than some people think as well. The Giants,
you're bigger on the Giants. We have them as a 7-win team.
Yeah.
They didn't play mathematically strong football last year. They just won a lot of close games at the end.
They didn't, and it's the same thing about Minnesota. Minnesota last year was one of those teams, and I'm bringing up Minnesota because they played the Giants, a couple of times. Minnesota was one of those teams where if you would have taken their one-score wins away from them and gave them all losses, they would have been worse than the Houston Texans last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so stuff like that when it comes to the Giants is very concerning. So if their metrics mathematically aren't really showing you much, but here's the metrics that math really doesn't figure out is that young player development, right? You have players that were really injured for the Giants last year. Wan'Dale Robinson, I believe Kayvon Thibodeau went down at some point last year. You have a lot of players that, when healthy, could change the dimensionality of this team. Whereas the Cowboys, you know what they are. You know the product that they're putting out on the field. But if all of a sudden Daniel Jones has a bunch of healthy wide receivers, we haven't seen him throw the ball that much, but he could. Mm-hmm. He has the arm to do that. But he doesn't because he's being asked to protect the ball. So I like the Cowboys. The Giants, I think, are going to do well. And then by association, the Commanders have to come in last place. Mm-hmm. And so this division is going to be a dogfight, I think, at the top and in the middle. And the way that this shakes down, this makes a lot of sense to me. And it seems to be the odds-on favor on how this division is going to play out.
Yeah, it's one of these things we agree upon the order, but not as far as the market agreeing as far as how close they are. The market has these guys spread out fairly far apart, almost with a game and a half to 2 games and a half between each of them. So you have them much tighter and giving them much more credit than the rest of the world is. But I do want to go to a team that seems to can never get enough love that I know you love, and I am on the bus with here, going to our number 5 over-under. And this is one of the great bets we have hitting the tier of worth an extra unit. The the Los Angeles Chargers over 9.5. We're projecting these guys to pull out 11 to 12 wins. And the Chargers are just in a spot where, everything that could have gone wrong last year, basically they have overcome. Primarily, Justin Herbert's not going to get hurt in September this year. At least that's projection. And with that, say what you will about Staley, and obviously I say a lot of negative things, he gives Herbert a lot of opportunities to win or lose. And like every other team, the quarterback is the most important element of will you win or not. Giving healthy Herbert and giving him more opportunities seems to be a no doubt that this team's going to get well into double digits.
When it comes to the Chargers here, the thing about the Chargers and the Giants is health. They seem to be the two teams that throughout the year accumulate the most catastrophic injuries that you could possibly think of for your player personnel. Either you get turf toe that's a whole season, you break a leg, a fractured tibia, like everything that could go wrong for the Chargers and the Giants usually goes wrong for the Chargers and the Giants. And so when I look at this team and I look at the adversity that they faced last year, and I even told you this last year, they're in the playoffs, I said, because even with all of that rough sled that they had last year, they still made the playoffs. They still are a playoff caliber team. With this offense, if healthy, if it ever will be healthy, it's electric. There was one time before that the Chargers had the best offensive in the league and didn't make the playoffs. And I don't see that happening again this year. But I see them being capable of smashing their over and to the degree of maybe 11 wins, 12 wins, because they are stronger than the Buffalo Bills. They're stronger, I feel, than the Jets. They're stronger than the Patriots. Every single match, if you put health to health, and you put the Chargers offense against another team's defense, the only defense that might give them fits would be the Jets and maybe the Patriots that they face all season. And this is a similar number that we're giving to the Chiefs, right? Where we're projecting the Chiefs to go over because their offense is so much better than a lot of
these guys have 2 extra games in hand.
Right? And so you look at it and you say, well, the Chargers offense is better than the Kansas City defense. So that might be where the Kansas City Chiefs lose one of these games. And
they probably will.
And the fact is that with a high-paced offense, it's the defense that has to keep up. And that was the defense that also let them down last year. So is this defensive line going to stay healthy? Is the linebacking core going to not be so messed up sometimes? Are the secondary players? I mean, you look at that playoff game, right? The secondary was making moves. It was rolling, but the offense sputtered, and that's what made the Chargers lose that game. They could have kept up if the offense was on par, but it wasn't. So what we saw was a defense that was giving takeaways, but wasn't able to lock it down. So that's the thing about the Chargers. If they can keep pace and the defense can keep getting takeaways, they're in a driver's seat to do really well this year.
Yes, they absolutely are. But let's dive into what that division is going to be when it's all said and done. And when we look at it, again, the Chargers are projected to be the first wild card team for the AFC. So they're going to be putting up points. We have them projected at either 11 or 12, which that's your second place team in a division. You're going to have a really strong division, and your bottom guys are going to get blown out. And that's essentially what is projected here. The Raiders are going to be right in line to have an opportunity at a top 10 pick. In fact, we have them projected to be the 8th worst team in the NFL. And the Broncos are surprisingly the middle of the league as the 15th worst team in the NFL. So that's how the AFC is shaping out, again, according to the market telling us what it is.
Yeah, I mean, this makes sense. And I like the Broncos. I think they're trending in the right direction. And I think they're a couple years away. I think they're still a couple years away. They're a young quarterback away. And it's going to take them time to compete. But I think their defense is solid. I think that everything that they're putting out there defensively is going to give fits. It just so happens that they have the Chargers and the Chiefs in the division. So
yeah, you're not going to really be able to do anything that. Now to go to our next over-under, one that we are both incredibly confident in, as well as the marketplace, all of the math we can find. This is one of the lines that is just artificially too low. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to get between at least 12 and 13 wins. And when we look at that, the end result is going to be just domination by the Cincinnati Bengals. They have one of the softest schedules in the entire NFL. And last year, they split their division. When we look at that division overall, they are demonstrably better than Cleveland and Baltimore. So the likelihood of them getting 3 division losses really is not there this year. And their hardest games then come across the other division leaders, being Buffalo, Kansas City, and Jacksonville. Of those 3 games, 2 of them are on the road. That's how you get a line to 10. But overall, when we do the market analysis of where it says they should be, this is a team that is projected to be, again, a 12 to 14 win team. And 10.5 is just way too low.
It's a good team. I mean,
great team.
I know I love the Bengals. Here living in Pittsburgh, I enjoy watching the Bengals, and I enjoy the competition that they're giving to everybody in their division because they were a laughing stock for such a long time. And Joey B, even with his injury, even with the injury coming out, even if he doesn't play any games early in the season, like if he misses 2 games early in the season, this team is built to beat people. I mean, no matter who's sitting there at quarterback, like as much as I dog Joe Mixon, and I should.
Yes, you should.
He does give them at least somewhat of a credible running game. And he came off of a season 2 years ago with 13 touchdowns, or a year ago with 13 touchdowns, not last year, the year before. So he can move the ball. And they have 2 young, talented wide receivers. This is what teams dream about.
Oh,
And
yeah.
to set the line at 10.5 is criminal.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those ones where you look at and you're like, what am I seeing that's wrong? You're not seeing anything wrong. Take the over because it's going to hit.
Mm-hmm. That's the way it is. And let's dive into what is probably the closest division across all of the metrics here. And this is one of the things when you look as far as what the market is telling you in the future spreads, as far as the predictions, that makes this one particularly so tight, because the Ravens, Steelers, and Browns are all within 3/4 of a game of each other. So when you look at their specific matchups against each other, their average spread is less than 2, being the games Ravens Steelers, Ravens Browns, and Browns Steelers. So these are all incredibly volatile because of how much they beat up on each other.
Yeah.
And the AFC North is literally Bengals and then roll some dice. And that's essentially what everything is being told here when we look at how this division is shaking out. Is the only division in the NFL that we're projecting every team to be over 500. And it's the only division that has this type of competition up and down it, and that includes the AFC East.
Yeah, this is a strong division, and it's been a strong division for a couple years now, where, the Steelers fell off last year. We expect them to be better this year. Maybe they make the playoffs, and that's the thing about the division is that the Ravens are a solidly built team as well. Mm-hmm. But where the Ravens go is Lamar. So if Lamar is healthy, their defense is not as thunderous as it has been in the past.
No, it's not.
With Roquan Smith there, it got better as the year went on. They're still mid.
They still can't rush the quarterback.
The Browns, they surprised many people last year with their ability to stick late in the games, actually having an offense that looked, with Jacoby Brissett, you're like, whoa, this is weird. Mm-hmm. So what you see, though, is that you get another year of Deshaun Watson. Is Deshaun Watson going to be the answer? We think not, but it's okay if you do. And with Chubb, it's credible. But they also didn't have a run defense last year.
No,
what do the Steelers like to do? The Steelers like to run the ball. What can the Bengals do? The Bengals can run the ball. What can the Ravens do? The Ravens, well, they run the ball with Lamar Jackson, right? So you're going to have a hard time if you can't keep up with running game. When you and even if you face the AFC East, right? I mean, the Bills aren't great at running, but they still have Josh Allen. We think that James Cook is going to do great. Ramondre Stevenson for the Patriots. So there is still talent around the league that is very good at running the ball, and the Browns can't stop it to save anybody's health. And so when you look at it, some people projecting the Browns to finish number 1, and you say, well, that's crazy, because it is. There is no mathematical way and no looking at the player personnel way that you can give, no reasonable explanation that you can give to say that the Browns will head out the top of the division over the Steelers, Ravens, and Bengals, because all 3 of those teams are clearly better than the Browns on offense, and then on defense as well, particularly on defense. So it lends to say that the Browns could end up at the bottom again, but not at the bottom of the league. I don't think the Browns are a bad team.
No, they're not.
I think the Browns are completely in that Broncos conversation where both of those teams have some solid pieces, right? Mm-hmm. But because of the division that they're in, those pieces don't get to shine. And because they don't get to shine, they end up last. And that's unfortunate for the Browns because they could be a very good team if they didn't have this division.
And we will be diving into our week 1 bets as the thing goes on. But let's get to our third strongest over-under when we're talking about teams that don't have it going on. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers is just as criminal as it was to have the Bengals at 10. This team is getting nowhere near 6 wins. Remember, to lose this bet, they would have to get to 7. And we are projecting that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to get to 3, maybe 4.
So, Joe,
this is one of the most asinine lines I have, but it's because people are afraid to go under 6.
So here's a couple of things.
Make some money. Go under.
Here's a couple of things. So when I was on the Savs and Four podcast a couple weeks ago, a bunch of Carolina fans, Atlanta Saints fans, all talking up. We couldn't find one Tampa fan.
No, you never can.
One Tampa fan. But as we talked about this division, it's going to be a competitive division because there's a lot of uncertainties. There's three actually, for the Bucs to be on the lookout for. Number one, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had some good seasons and some bad seasons. He makes mistakes. He's Baker Mayfield. But he's better than Kyle Trask. So the question is, how many games does Baker Mayfield play? If you believe Baker Mayfield's going to play the whole season, you've just bumped up your win total from 3 to like 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then you take a look at their running game. People are saying Rachaad White is not good.
He's not.
As a full-time running back. So you're talking about getting an undrafted second named Sean Tucker, undrafted, propelling up your boards. If you have an undrafted running back that didn't even get looked at, didn't even get invited anywhere, I mean, these running backs can have a good season, a miraculous season once or twice, a la like Ruben Drones, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not sustainable for this team. Then you look at the defense. The defense, which could be the best unit of the two, offense versus defense, but is the defense strong enough to carry a weak offense? And when I say weak offense, I'm not calling Godwin or Evans bad. But
they are when they're hurt, which happens more often.
What I am saying, though, is it's an offense with many inconsistencies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an offense that is probably going to struggle to spread the field. Now, this 6.5, you might split with Carolina. You might split with Atlanta. We think both of those teams are going to do decent enough. But we have Carolina similar in the same vein at 6.5. You know, it coming in under at that. And that's just the nature of the beast, really. But they do have the benefit of playing another weak division. So if they can beat all of those teams in that weak division and come out,
they play the AFC South as well.
If they can come out of their division with 2 wins and then and then get 3 from the South, you're looking at a potential whole new ball game where by the end of the season, maybe they're on the cusp of 7, but logistically speaking, they're not getting to 8. So
this team is probably going 1-5 in their division, and then at best 1 win against the AFC South. This team is equal to the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. But
if you're a Tampa believer, you might float a bet on the over, but I think most of the money is going under.
The way you make money on the Tampa Bay long is you go under. This team is going to get between 3 and 4 wins. It's the way that it is. And when we look at the rest of the division here, it is the Saints division to lose. When we went through this in the whole offseason, we were talking about how the Falcons are much better. But when we look at what the market is telling us in the longs, just as when we talked about how the Falcons over-under was perfect at 8.5, that's essentially true in everywhere people are putting money on or against the Falcons. They are a team that is the most balanced in both departments. Mm-hmm. And when you have a team that's literally projected to win 8.2 games, which is 0.3 away from half, about as close as you can be to half, it's showing you that exactly what we were saying. The market is in a spot where it has not made up its mind. Now, we're going to be in a spot where following week 1 is the most overreaction that the markets have. And maybe the Falcons will catapult as a result in our power rankings from week 1 to 2. But right now, the Atlanta Falcons are rated as the 14th worst team or 18th best, depending on how you want to look at it. And a team that at the bottom half, not projected to make the playoffs, but
disagree
in second place in this division.
I like the Falcons.
I know you do.
I have them projected really high, but I want to talk about this for a moment.
Sure.
This 9.5, and we're big believers in, this Saints team being able to put up points. And the defense is capable enough, when healthy, to stop teams from scoring. So if you know anything about numbers, right, you put up more points than you give up, there's probably a good chance that you're going to win football games.
That's right.
And with the Saints playing a weak division on the other side and a competitive yet weaker division in their own, you are writing a story where there's a good chance they're sitting with an easy 6-7 wins at some point in the season. And you're only looking for 3 more wins somewhere. They face the Giants. That could be a competitive game. They face the Vikings. That's going to be a competitive game. But again, the Vikings defense sucks too. So if they can end up putting more points up, then
there's a good chance, based
win.
upon their schedule, the Saints are bringing the best defense 3/4 of the time.
As I said,
and that's how you get to a projection of 12 wins.
As I said in the Savs and 4 podcast, 12 is not out of the realm of possibility for the Saints. Realistically, they might be hitting 10, but it's a playoff team. It's a division winner. It's a division-winning team, and it's going to be a team that's going to be spicy for you as the season goes on, because some of those wins might be closer than you might think for some of those games.
Yeah, it's not. This is not a projection saying they're going to cover the spread 10 times. This is they're going to walk away a victory at least 10 times, and we're saying it's going to be 12. And when we're talking about the spread, let's dive into our first game from week 1 where there's an advantage. And that is going to be the Thursday night game that we're having coming up here. When we originally wrote this here, the spread was at 5. This spread should be at, let me get it here correctly here. This spread should be at 3 points. So when you got it at 5, you got it with a 2-point edge. And the reason this is important is because getting extra value is how you win in the long term in spread betting. And getting 2 extra points than you ought to by betting it earlier in the week is how you take the advantage. Now, granted, Kelsey is what made the thing move by the 0.5 point, but even at a 1.5 value, there is tremendous value in that, in going on to winning the next stage. And that is where we look at when we're saying, what are good bets versus elite bets or great bets for a given week? It is how much of a difference over what the spread ought to be are we at? And again, for tomorrow night's game on Thursday night, the spread should be 3 points, obviously with the Chiefs as the favorite. And seeing that we were getting it this morning as a 2-point spread difference of what it should be is a tremendous value.
The one thing about in-game personnel, right, is that right now the Chiefs have an injury. It's a big injury. It's a offensive injury to Kelsey that is going to affect both their blocking, their scheming, and triply, it's going to affect their passing game. Now, we said Mahomes is going to be fine. However, in this game, you cannot give another team that is a very capable scoring team 5 points.
Nope.
That number, and even when it was at 6.5 at some point in time, even with Kelsey, the Lions can score. They have a very capable offense. Their defense, okay, it is what it is, right? But so is the Chiefs. And so we said again about the Chargers, when you can score points, and again about the Saints, score points and maybe stop a little bit, there's a good chance you might win this game. But this game is probably going to come down to a field goal, like you said, Joe. And those 5 points is a great value because you're not putting money on Chiefs money line. And I know 100% people aren't willing to give the Lions 5 points. So what's the bet in this game? It's either stay away from it or bet it. And if you're going to bet it, you got to take the Lions with the points.
That's exactly it. That's exactly where it comes from. Like I said, the line for this game should be 3 points. When we do the math, that's where it should be. So that's the answer there. And while we're talking about the Detroit Lions, let's dive into their division and see what that's going to look like. We have the Lions projected to win this division, with the Vikings that many people have said just put a fork in them, they're done. But the markets are saying that the Vikings are going to be an over 500 team at 9 wins. And that in and of itself is enough to make the playoffs in the NFC. The Bears, well, people want to say they're back on paper and articles. That's not where the money's going at all. And the reality is the Bears are projected to get only 6-7 wins. And until yesterday, the Packers were going to be one of the 3 best bets on the under. The line ticked down last night. But the Packers are projected to get less than 6 wins. And when you look at this overall, it really becomes a division that has no one really wanting to step up and take it, and the Lions kind of getting it by default because in a lot of ways they're the fun, sexy team because everyone loves Dan Campbell and no one loves Dad Cousins. But the reality is it's not a very good division, and the Lions are just capable of outscoring so many people.
So what we see and what we've seen throughout the NFL is that you have bloodbath divisions and you have close divisions because they're good and close divisions because nobody wants to take a stand. The NFC North, to me, this season specifically, is very much like the NFC South. You have a lot of excitement over the Lions. You have excitement over, having Jordan Addison in the Vikings. You are wanting Justin Fields to do good. And then you got a new quarterback in Jordan Love. And so what we think is going to happen is that the Lions will take this division. But I would not be surprised if come December you are, seeing the Vikings play it up and they're at the top. But with bad defenses comes a big responsibility on the offense. And every single team in this division has issues on defense. The Packers have a bunch of first-round guys, but their defense is not good. The Bears, they trade away defensive players like they're going out of stop, right? The Vikings seem to not have one, and the Lions, are they capable of putting one together?
The Vikings defense lived and died by the turnover last year.
Yeah.
And they got rid of the people who created the turnovers for them, and they kept Cousins, who does have a fair enough of interceptions in his belt.
But here's the thing. Even when you get a guy, we talk about turnovers a lot. This division is capable of causing a lot of turnovers and getting a lot of turnovers because Jordan Love, Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, and Jared Goff are all capable of throwing interceptions. They're all capable of fumbling the ball. So I see this division as being close at the top. I don't think the Bears are in the conversation yet. I think they're maybe 1 or 2 years out still. And this is really realistically the only time I'm ever going to say this, the Lions division to lose.
Fair enough. Well, why don't we bounce to another division that's going to be a lot more interesting that I think some people are going to be a little interested in how it shakes out here. With the AFC East, with the projection being that this is going to be a 3-horse race, some of the best teams in the NFL, all of them are projected to be within the top 3, within a game and a half of each other. Very, very volatile, with the exception of the Patriots are definitely by far and away the ones that last. So we look at this, we see the Dolphins being selected as the probable final wild card in the AFC, which means the Jets don't make it under the initial projections. And to me, Bob, I find this is a very interesting order, given from how much me hates on Tua all the time and the Dolphins.
So, in all honesty, when we were talking this summer, you and I, and we were talking to the audience, I said the Dolphins could probably be one of the worst teams in the league. I also said the Jets have a chance to make the Super Bowl. Then the schedule came out. And yeah, so you look at it and you say to yourself, well, the Jets are going to have a tough sled. It's going to be a tough time for the Jets to produce anything that looks like, hey, we're going to be head and shoulders above the Bills in this division. The Dolphins, notwithstanding if Tua is healthy, right? If Tua stays healthy, there's a good chance they make the playoffs. Tua doesn't stay healthy, I don't think this team has a chance to make the playoffs. And so this is a division for me. again, just like a couple of the other divisions, but this one specifically is very health related. The Bills with Josh Allen, I don't even know who the Bills' second quarterback is, right?
Yeah, it's Tyrod Taylor.
The Dolphins with
Do not have one.
Tua, right? The Jets, if Aaron Rodgers decides that he doesn't want to be an MVP caliber candidate again, what's going to happen there?
Well, they're never
Patriots
not
with Mac Jones, they don't have a second quarterback. So
yeah, the Patriots didn't have a second quarterback on their roster.
You're looking at this
Patriots
division.
have 11 offensive linemen because they don't know what they're doing at their offensive line.
You're looking at this division.
Really a fearful spot.
And you're saying to yourself, well, okay, so where does the best unit face up against the best unit at? Well, you would say the Bills have the best offense. I would maybe stop you to say that the Dolphins had the best offense if they were able to.
The reason I say that is the four most important players on the Dolphins, being Armstead, Tua, Hill, and Waddle, all have injury history.
I'm getting there. So you might, if you're a Dolphins fan, you might say, oh, we have the best offense. If you're a Jets fan, you're like Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook. That's the best offense. And I would tend to say, well, what's the most balanced offense? What's the potentially most balanced offense? And it's probably going to be the Jets.
Yes.
Will a balanced offense win this division? Well, let's take a look at the defenses. Who has the best defense in the division? The Jets and the Patriots. Who has good defenses, but maybe not. I mean, they have the players to be the best defenses. The Dolphins. The Dolphins have the best players to be the best defense. And the Bills, they have a lot of good, talented players as well. So health plays a role, but also, what are you going to give to me lately? What are you going to give to me in the snow? What are you going to give to me in the rain? What's going to happen? And these projections feel accurate to me. Mm-hmm. Although I want to give more credit to the Jets, I want to also say that it is the Bills that have been on top of this division for quite some time. But I'm not ready to just feed it to the Bills right away. So I think this is going to be closer than a lot of people want to believe, especially if you're an AFC East fan.
And let's dive into this, because this is our tier game for this week. Is the Jets playing the Bills at home on Monday Night Football. This is a game that we have projected should be a half a point spread, if not an outright pick them. And the Jets are getting 2.5 points. And at a 2.5 point spread, 2 to 2.5 point spread, it's a massive game to jump on and to take the points. Because again, you shouldn't ever get something that's more than 1.5. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the Jets are going to be getting this type of a spread is something that is dramatically in their favor. All the reasons you said: home opener, most balanced offense, has a defense. Jets might win this game outright, but certainly knowing that the spread should be a half a point and that you're getting 2.5, take that all day.
I'm good with all the things you just said.
So let's dive into the last and most valuable over-under that we have for our bets that need to get locked in. And that is the San Francisco 49ers line is at 10. First off, this is just the only way this happens is if Joey Bosa never signs a contract ever. Because the record that they have without Joey Bosa is 5-10 with the career without Bosa or Nick Bosa. Yeah. And with him playing, regardless of who their quarterback is, and Purdy, it's kind of hard to get lower than that as a starting quarterback in terms of value. We still have them projected to win 13 games. Yeah. San Francisco's schedule is so incredibly soft. Putting Deebo Samuel in a quarterback still might get them to 11. Like, there is no way this team does not hit the over.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it realistically and you ask
yourself, it should be 13.
When you look at it realistically and you ask yourself, what are 6 games they could lose? 7 games they could lose?
You ain't finding them.
You're not finding them. They play Arizona twice. They play the Rams twice. Even if Stafford's healthy, I don't think they beat the Niners. And that's the one thing I said about Seahawks versus the Niners. I like the Seahawks better, but there's no way that this line should be that low. It's like talking about Georgia, and the line for Georgia was like they're going to have an undefeated season or they're not. And for the Niners, And in the same vein as the Chiefs, it's their division to lose. And the way that they played defense last year, the way that they were able to get McCaffrey going and play offense, it honestly is their division to lose, no matter how much I like the Seahawks. The Seahawks are prone to mistakes, and if the Niners can capitalize on that, game over.
And let's get into our two best bets for week one as we're concluding the show here. The first one being that the trend of week one tends to be to overvalue bad teams and end up giving them too many points. When we look at this game between Washington and Arizona, first off, we do have Washington as the worst team in football. And correction, we have Washington as the third worst team in football and Arizona as the worst. When we calculate all of the math out, this spread should be at 4.5 points. It's currently riding at 7. And this means you can get 2.5 points in your favor by taking Arizona and the points. It's one of the slam dunks of the weekend, the second best bet of the weekend, the only one in the 2.5 point tier. And again, that is the difference. When you get extra tiers, extra points, it adds to your value. And that's how you make all of this work. So we look at this and say 2.5 points of value, you got to take it. And I get that Arizona's the worst team, but Washington's the third worst team. And when it's all said and done, they don't cover touchdowns.
Yeah, I can't really argue with this. The only sticking point I have is scoring going to happen in this game?
Sure.
Both defenses are getting scored on. Who's going to be the quarterback for Arizona? Who knows? Who cares? But 7 points week one against another team that is projected to do bad seems strange. It seems weird. And yeah, this just makes a whole lot of sense to me.
And when we go to our number one team, it's exactly in the same line. Undervaluing the bad teams to a large extent. Don't get me wrong. Texans are a dog to the Baltimore Ravens, but the line should be at 6.5 points. And to give it a 10 is a 3.5 point edge to the Houston Texans. And again, you have to look impartially to this and not look through any other lens than what is giving me the best value. And 3.5 points is a tremendous value. It's
Right.
the difference of about a 30% in the likelihood of an outcome. Now, yes, is Baltimore going to win this game? Yeah. And even at 6.5, they'd be a 7-point favorite. But they're not an 80% favorite. And that seems like splitting hairs, and I get that it is once you get past this point. But when you're making value in your spread bets, getting the extra points is massive. And a 3.5 extra juice in your favor is insanely good value. And this is why you see lines dance around a lot. The public wants to make this spread 13. The actual big-time bettors know it should be at 6.5 and are just going to wait for this thing to tick up. And right now, it's the best value of the week. I'm willing to bet by Sunday morning it's even bigger than 10 and even more value on the Houston Texans.
I agree with everything you just said there, Joe. When you have a 10-point favorite or a 10-point underdog in an NFL game, yeah, there's a chance that the Ravens will smoke. There's a very good chance that happens. However, 10 points in an NFL game is huge. It's monumental. Even if the Ravens go up 24-3, there's still garbage time. There's still a chance that this goes to maybe 23-14, right? And you win. And so am I saying, bet the farm on the Texans? No, I'm not saying bet the farm on the Texans. But like you said, that value is incredible. This spread should be lower. There should never realistically be a spread in the NFL that should be plus 10, plus 12, plus 13. And the Houston Texans played the Chiefs pretty good last year, if I'm not mistaken.
They played Philly better, but yeah, they did.
The Houston Texans played Philly pretty good. And they're a team that struggled offensively. Now, do you believe in their new quarterback? Do you believe that the run game could come out? Week 1, we know nothing of what this team is going to put out there on the map. And so if you go in there and say, I like the Ravens -10, you're saying to yourself, I like Lamar Jackson, who hasn't played in the preseason. I like a team who has struggled on defense last year. You're saying
you couldn't hold a lead to save their life.
I like a team to win by 10 points. And yeah, Houston Texans aren't good. They're bad. Mm-hmm. But 10 points bad? I don't think so.
Nope. Again, this spread should be 6.5, and to give 3.5 extra points of value, that is the difference. So, team players out there, we obviously appreciate you checking out and watching. Bob, if you have any other thoughts of things that we should cover that we might have missed, let's talk it out, man.
Honestly, I think that as I was going through these lines, let me pull up my FanDuel real quick. Mm-hmm. I didn't know you were going to put me on the spot like that.
If there's something that's sticking out, if anyone out there has a question of a specific game about what the spread should be, we certainly will address that as well.
All right. So let me take a look here, and let me see what we got active right now. All right. So there's my winners. There's my college one. So if I take a look at the NFL, I mean, there's some over and unders that are very curious to me as well. One of them being the Commanders Cardinals at over under 38.5. That one could be enticing because again, there's no defense there, but the question is there going to be enough scoring? Another one that seems to jump off the map to me to say that this game is a one that maybe could go over would be the Rams and Seahawks. That game is currently at 45.5.
Well, one of the things when you're looking at over-unders for week 1, make sure the quarterback played in the preseason. Because if they didn't, they almost always hit the under.
Yeah, and then you're looking at another game here where the Dolphins are getting +3. For everything that we said about both the Dolphins and the Chargers, that line seems to be good. Mm-hmm. But I kind of am swaying towards the Dolphins on that one. Getting 3 from the Chargers, I think, could potentially pay off. And, I'm not really seeing much else that I really, really like. Saints -3, I could get behind that as well. But everything that you said, I'd be like, yeah, do I want to put a mega parlay in with those? Sure, why not? Because it's going to pay out pretty well. But by itself, I think the bets that you have and that we talked about with the Jets, the Lions, the Cardinals, and the Texans, those all have the most likelihood to hit because there's not a lot of certainty. The lines seem to be off like you had projected and you broke down. So, and all the other lines seem to be right and just. And so it's
in general they are almost every other line. Every other line is a 1.5 or closer.
It's just more so. What do you like? What's your cup of tea more?
Mm-hmm. And this is the importance of breaking it down and keeping it updated from what the market says, because as they say, the market is always right. And going with that and giving yourself a concrete base and knowing what the numbers should be are really the big value here. So team players, leave us your comments. Let us know what you think for your bets here, for obviously the divisions and the over-unders that we went through here. And we'll be with you again here next Friday, breaking down the best bets and fantasy takes for the week to be.